Hello and welcome to Let the Stone Speak. This is a podcast where we talk about the latest in biblical archaeology. I'm here in Jerusalem, but earlier today I was actually at Tel Lachish where I interviewed Professor Yosef Garfinkel of Hebrew University. We've interviewed him a number of times in this program. He's preparing to start renewed excavations at Tel Lachish on Sunday. Today's a Thursday. And as part of a preview of what he expects to find or hopes to find for this coming season, we thought we would interview him and bring to you the latest of what he's up to there at that very important site in biblical Judah. So for today's program, please enjoy this interview with Professor Yosef Garfinkel of Hebrew University. Again, if you like the program, please do subscribe to this channel on YouTube. You can also sign up for our daily emails there at our website armstronginstitute.org. Just scroll down, you'll find where you can receive an email alert of any new content we have on our site. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the interview. Professor Yosef Garfinkel, thanks very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
So we're here at Tel Lachish. You led the fourth expedition here a few years ago, and now you're back. Your team and then other teams, I believe, were here this summer or will be. What's the draw here at Lachish?
Well, first of all, the new project is in cooperation with a university from Korea and also some Australian universities. So it's the seventh expedition to Lachish because there were two other expeditions after we left.
Okay.
We were the fourth, there were fifth, sixth, and now we are the seventh.
So why do people keep coming back to this site as opposed to others, you feel?
This is one of the most important archaeological sites in the Near East. Not just Israel. It's really amazing because this site is connected with Egypt, it's connected with Mesopotamia, it's connected with Greek and Cyprus, and it's connected with the biblical tradition.
So the biblical tradition is probably, or the Bible, is probably the most interesting period for our listeners. So perhaps you could just briefly give the main highlights of Lachish and its importance in biblical history for us.
Lachish was one of the important Canaanite cities. We know about it from the strength of the fortifications, from the richness of the archaeological discoveries that were made here. We have the Amarna tablet, where we have 6 letters from the king of Lachish sent to Egypt. Mm-hmm. And then in the biblical tradition, this Canaanite city has been destroyed by Joshua when the people of Israel entered the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm. And then following on that, does it fall out of use of importance, and if it does, till when does it feature in the Bible?
The Bible mentioned Lachish as a Canaanite city that has been conquered by the people of Israel in the time of Joshua. And then the Bible mentioned Lachish again about 300 years later or so, when it was first fortified by King Rehoboam, the grandson of David and the son of Solomon.
And that period belonging to Rehoboam, that was the period that you spent a lot of time in your first expedition, or your time here, in uncovering. That was one of your research questions, right? To try and find the city, if it was here, from that period.
If you put it in a larger context, I dedicated the last 15 years or so to archaeological research of the 10th century BC. Mm-hmm. I started at Khirbet Kayafa and then another site called Khirbet El Rai, when we have remained from the time of David. Mm-hmm. We have radiocarbon dating clearly from 3,000 years ago. Also the pottery in both sites is the same. And we have a fortified city in Judah from the time of David. Then Solomon. In Khirbet Kayafa, we discovered a nice temple model which fit the biblical description of Solomon Palace and Solomon Temple. Mm-hmm. The same type of architecture, which typical to royal architecture, appear in the model. And the model was found here in Judah, and the dating is 1000 BC. So we have David and Solomon. And then was my third king, Rehoboam. What can archaeology tell us about Rehoboam? And there is a biblical tradition that Rehoboam fortified 15 cities in Judah. Mm-hmm. And one of them is Lachish. Mm-hmm. Now, some site like Livna, nobody knows exactly where it is Livna. So we decided to go to Lachish because the identification of Lachish is beyond any doubt. And when we came here, as we said, we were the fourth expedition. But the point was that the first, the second, and third expedition didn't find much evidence about the first Iron Age level at the site. This is level 5, by the way. The last Canaanite city is level 6. The first Iron Age level is the level 5.
So each of these numbers are basically the different cities through different periods that lived on the same site.
When you start excavating, it's level 1. It was the late Persian and Hellenistic. You go down level 2, it's been destroyed by the Babylonian. You go further down, level 3 has been destroyed by Sennacherib in 701 BC. You go further down, you have level 4, which is already a fortified city all over the mount. And under it, you have level 5. And then you have a Hyttus, and level 6 and 7 are already the Canaanite cities.
And so you're saying that this level 5 city is the one that, until your expedition, there was little or no evidence of it on this site?
There were heavy debate about level 5. First of all, if it was a village or a city. And the second debate was about the chronology. Some people said it's from the 10th century BC, some people said it's from the 9th century BC, other scholars thought about 8th century BC. So you have a range of ideas, 250 years between the earliest and the latest proposed dating. And
so you came here with this research question in mind: is this a fortified city during city number 5? And let's try and get some dating for it if we can find it. And so did you find that, and how are you going to continue on from that?
So a major question that I ask myself is why the earliest expedition couldn't find clear evidence from level 5, and it was a bit unclear. And my conclusion was that maybe it's a smaller site. The other expedition excavated mainly in the west part of Tel Lachish and the south part of Tel Lachish. And this here, we are sitting in the northeast corner of the Tel, and it was hardly excavated. Now we know, for example, at Chatzor, that in the 10th century BC it was a smaller city, and only later in the Iron Age they built a much larger city. And you see it in other places as well. So I predicted that probably in Lachish we have the same phenomenon. So we should find the earlier city, or the place where the earliest city existed, and there we will have answers. Yeah, the earliest Iron Age city. If it was on a smaller part of the site and not all over, this is where we need to investigate.
And I think this is interesting, of just using common sense as to where you might find it on the Tel.
Thank you. Anyhow, I ask myself, if you come to Lachish and you build a smaller city, where shall you build it? In the north, in the east, in the south, in the west? And my conclusion was that here, in the northeast corner. Why? Because the valley is over here. In the valley you have water. The valley is good land for agriculture. And also the valley is the main road leading from Ashkelon, the port city, into Hebron in the hill mount, in the hill country. So from Ashkelon to Lachish is 1 day walk. From Lachish to Hebron is another day walk. So caravans leaving the port city with all kind of goods will come here, stay here a few days, do exchange, various economic activities, and then they can continue another day to Hebron. So the valley is important, and I said the orientation of the city should be toward the valley. So that's why we choose this area. And we excavated here along the slope in various sides. And here, for example, we came immediately to level 6, which means that level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have been completely eroded away. And in another part, we fell immediately to late bronze or even middle bronze. So where is this disappearing level 5? Anyhow, after we understood the erosion processes, we start excavating over there, and indeed we found level 5. We found a city wall, and we found houses abutting the city wall. So we know that level 5 is fortified.
And how big was the wall itself that you discovered?
It's about 3 meters wide.
3 meters
Very
wide.
impressive city wall. Today it's all covered with vegetation, so it's hard to see, but I can give you photos taken during the excavation, and you can see how it's looked like. And then the other question is, what is the dating?
Right.
Now we know it's level 5 because it was covered by the city wall of level 4, and it's sitting on the Canaanite level 6. So if 6 below and 4 above, it must be 5.
Yep.
This is the sandwich, stratigraphic sandwich. Now the absolute dating. So we sent olive pits for radiocarbon dating. And the date were the last part of the 10th century BC and the first part of the 9th century BC. Something like 920 BC till about 860 BC. This is the range of the radiocarbon dating. So this is exactly fit a city that was built in the time of Rehoboam.
So I understand that there is a debate about just how big the city was during City 5. You and one of your colleagues even in your paper here about this that I'll give a link to in the program show notes, talk about both of you write it, and yet he's got a different idea of the size of the city during Rehoboam's time, or the city 5. What does he think? and how do you diverge?
The point is that we found part of the city wall of level 5 in 2 places, all of them here in the northeast part of the site. And the question is why the expedition who worked in the west and in the south didn't find more of the city wall. So I thought, according to Lachish and other sites like Tel Farah North, biblical Tirza, that we know Iron Age cities when they just started, they didn't have much manpower, they didn't have much resources, so they built smaller cities. And after 100 years or so, when you have more population, more resources, then they enlarge the city, and you can see urban development. And I thought that probably in Lachish it's the same process. They came and built a smaller city on 1/3 or 1/4 or 40% of the city, and after 100 years, when you have more population, they enlarge and build level 4 all over the site. So this was my personal view, and I'm sure about this.
Yes.
My young student, Hugo Kang, he has bigger appetite. He said, no, level 5 was immediately built all over the site.
Right.
So you want to prove me wrong. Okay, why not? I'd be happy to be wrong.
So I think you've told me before he's even more maximalist than you.
Yes. So he is want to go to opposite to the southwest corner of the site and to make a trench along the fortification line, and he will try to find level 5 city wall also in the far edge of Lachish.
And he's digging at the same time, right?
Yeah, we will work together. So if he's right, then level 5 was bigger.
Okay.
And if I'm right, level 5 was smaller.
But either way, we're debating about the size of the city of level 5 that dates from around Rehoboam's time, not whether it existed.
Sure, we have a radiocarbon date. From the old excavation, we have about 4 or 5 radiocarbon date. But about 3 or 4 months ago, we made a very large radiocarbon project, and we sent to Oxford University 80 samples.
Wow.
For dating from Lachish and from Khirbet El Rai. We want to have better dating of the 13th century BC, the 12th century BC, the 11th, the 10th, and the 9th. Some of the samples are from Lachish, that we have Canaanite, and then the kingdom of Judah, and in Khirbet El Rai we have the time of the judges. When Lachish was not inhabited, the settlement pattern, the settlement center moved to Khirbet El Rai, and the two sites together giving us the full sequence.
And I think it's interesting when you referenced the Bible before, talking about Rehoboam building all these certain cities, that this account is mentioned in the book of Chronicles. If I'm not mistaken. And so what's the significance, do you think, of that fact, that it's in Chronicles and perhaps not mentioned in an earlier source?
The Bible is not a newspaper that you have exact information about day by day by day. They took 400 years from David to the destruction of the temple, and then it's all composed and condensed into the book of King 1 and King 2.
Yeah.
So we couldn't put all the information. I wish the Bible was 100 times bigger.
Don't we all?
But we have a very condensed history, and sometimes on some kings you have only a few sentences and that's it. Also they rule 20 or 30 years, or you almost know nothing about their activities.
Right.
So I don't know how tradition, why something is kept here, why something is kept there. The fact is that's what we have.
Right. And then the fact that, when the biblical book of Chronicles is written, one of the last books perhaps in the Tanakh, and so I understand a lot of people would say that, well, he's talking about Rehoboam here. Rehoboam's 500, 600 years, 700 years even, some people would say, from the time of writing. And so how would he know, that Rehoboam built this site?
But basically what we have is a city list. We have a list. Rehoboam fortified cities in Judah and Benjamin, and then we have the list. And the list could be kept as a list.
Yep.
It's not a big narrative about a war or about some other activities. It's a very condensed information, as a matter of fact.
So I know that there are some other archaeologists that came out after you discovered this this fortification of the City 5, and it dated to the time period around Rehoboam's time, including his time. and they came and said, "Okay, fine, you found a city wall, and it dates to around Rehoboam's time, but it's not Rehoboam. It's locals. It's probably local Canaanite population." What have you found that would kind of give? I know this is the age-old question. How would you give ethnic identity to archaeological discoveries? What can you say to the Judean nature of the fortification?
We have a very nice city wall, and the house is abutting the city wall. In Khibet Kayafa, we have the same features, but in Kayafa it was a chasmat city wall. So the city wall was not a solid wall, it was with rooms. Here it's a solid wall. And I think it's indicating that Lachish was more important from the very beginning. That's why they built a more strong city wall from a solid wall. But the concept that houses abutting the city wall appear here like in Khibet Kayafa and like in other cities in Judah, like Tel Natzben, Nir Ramallah, Bet Shemesh, Tel Bet Mirsim, and Tel Sheva. So it fit perfectly the typical Judean urban concept. And you don't have it in other sites. In the north, in the Kingdom of Israel or Philistine side, you don't have houses and city wall abutting each other. And then you have the pottery. And we have the typical Judean pottery, and you can see the continuation of material culture here in Tel Lachish. And also the site itself, you have level 5, then level 4 was built on top of it, and level 3 without any destruction. So it's the same people that continue to live here till Sennacherib came here in 701 and destroyed the city.
So you're saying since the city, there's no destruction layer between when we definitely know that this was run by the Judeans or the Judahites, that it makes sense that the city 5 was by the same people. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. 5, 4, and 3 is one continuation of about 200 years.
So that was your 4th expedition. Now you're back in 2022. I see that this area behind us has already been prepared for excavation. You've got a surveyor out at the site today to do a bit of preparatory work. When do you begin? How long is it going to last? And what do you hope to uncover as you're excavating this year?
Well, today is Thursday. We are starting on Sunday.
Okay.
That's 3 days from now. Okay, we found the city wall. We excavated 1.5 house from level 5. But 1.5 house, you cannot understand the whole city.
Right.
So the idea is to enlarge the area, and I hope to excavate after 3 years or so, maybe 6, 7, or 8 complete houses. And once we'll have more houses, then we'll have more pottery. And we'll have better understanding what is the fingerprint of this period from pottery point of view. We will have more animal bones, and we can have information about cult, if we'll find figurine or if we'll not find figurines. It's also important. If we'll find an inscription, if we'll find a seal, whatever, or a metal object, whatever. We just want to know more about the people who lived here in the later part of the 10th century and beginning of the 9th century BC.
So adjacent to us here is where you found the city wall and the house that you're talking about, and this is basically a continuation in this direction of that same city wall and adjacent houses you're hoping to find.
Yeah, exactly.
So perhaps just one final question, if you could put this the discovery of a fortification during the late 10th century in the context of the larger debate over David, Solomon. Do you feel like this debate is coming to a close now, or it's going to keep on raging no matter what is discovered? Typically Rehoboam doesn't fit into this debate, but this site is putting Rehoboam into that debate. Where does it stand right now, do you feel?
Well, the kingdom of Judah existed about 400 years. The 8th and the 7th are well known because we have the Babylonian destruction and also the Assyrian destruction. But the earlier 2 centuries, the 9th and the 10th, were not so well known, and that's why the debate started. And maybe 40 years ago, indeed, there was a room for such a debate because we didn't have much information. And I dedicated really large part of my academic life to research the 10th century BC. In Khibet Kayafa and Khibet El Rai, we have the beginning of the 10th century BC. And here in Lachish, we have the later part of the 10th century BC and the 9th century BC. So together, all these 3 sites bridging the gap. And I don't think that today people can have the same extreme ideas as they have 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for your time today. I really hope to come back and see you
Sure,
during
you're welcome to join
excavations.
us. Here, take a
Oh,
trowel and come to
okay.
dig.
Well, I can bring my own. Looks similar to that. We'll see if we get to come out and help you. I'm sure your team's going to do great work out here. All of your team from the different parts of the world. Thanks very much for your time.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Professor Yosef Garfinkel at Tel Lachish. If you enjoyed that and you want to see more content similar to that, please do subscribe to our channel, and please do subscribe to our print magazine as well. This is called Let the Stone Speak. It's available to you wherever you are in the world for free, comes out 6 times per year, and we focus on the biblical archaeology being uncovered here in Israel. So to do that, you can write an email to letters@armstronginstitute.org, or you can go ahead and go to our website and just scroll down. You'll find a way to subscribe to the magazine to get your free subscription to Let the Stone Speak. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.